So my name's Monica Parker, and I'm founder of a company called Hatch, and in a minute there you go. And Hatch is actually an acronym. It stands for Human Analytics Think Connect Hatch. And that's what we do as an organization. We use human analytics to help businesses understand how they change and how they can come up with new ideas. But it also comes from this quote, which I love, which says, "You cannot go on indefinitely being an ordinary, decent egg. You must be hatched or go bad." And I love that because, to me, it's really a clarion call towards change. And when I think about AI and some of the concerns about AI and that people are talking about, it's really just about the world changing. And some people say that the changes that are going on right now are different. That they're fundamentally different, that they're happening so much faster. And in fact, they say we live in a VUCA world, right? Have you guys heard this expression?
No.
That it's more volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And I actually don't buy that. I think that the world is always changing, that we always have technology that's affecting things, that we always had automation. If you look in 1900, 85% of the jobs that existed in 1900 just didn't exist in the year 2000. So we've always been changing, and technology's always been affecting the way that we change. So I've only got one more slide. And this is a picture here from 40 years ago. I won't say. Actually, from 40 years ago. That's me, and that's two of my favorite people. That's my brother and my mom. And I put this here for two reasons. One, because I wanted to embarrass my brother and my mom who are here with me tonight, which I thought was fair.
I thought, you know what? I thought you were so nice on the stage.
I know. No, come on, we were freaking cute.
I needed that other data.
Come on.
I needed the Bell Labs data to show me that you were not a nice person.
We were cute. Come on, and that outfit my mom's wearing, I think they're selling it for like $100 in the Village right now as like a vintage piece. So we were cute. But why did I put this up here? I put this up here for a reason. Because 40 years ago, the way we perceive the world is actually, it's different. And I want us to think for a minute about what it'll be like for children that age in 40 years from now. So anybody here have kids that are maybe my brother's age, like 7, 8, 9?
Younger.
Somewhere in that zone. So a kid that's around 7, 8 today, 65% of them will have jobs that haven't even been invented yet. Think about that for a minute. Jobs that haven't even been invented yet, that's amazing. And out of those, so kids that are 10 years old today will have 16 jobs in 9 industries. How many of you have maybe worked in 1, 2 industries? 16 jobs in 9 industries. So anybody have older kids, maybe entering like their first job or just coming out of uni? I'm seeing a shaking head. So in the OECD nations, 70% of young people who are entering the labor market will have jobs that will disappear due to automation in the next 10 to 15 years. So they're being trained for jobs that they're not even going to be able to do in the next 10 to 15 years. And so the reason I want to talk about this is because actually when I hear that, I think skills gap. I think there's a big skills gap, but actually it's probably not the skills gap you're thinking of. So the question is, people go, oh, well, we got to teach them to code. But actually, I'm not sure I believe that, because I'm going to date myself, maybe 20 years ago, I didn't know how to program my VCR. Anybody else? Anybody remember programming VCR? Come on, right? Thank you. I didn't know how to do it, but I didn't need to learn to do it, because you know what? Now my TV does it for me. And they're saying that computers are going to code themselves in the next 10 years. So to me, the skills gap are the very elements that make us human. And so I mentioned the VUCA world. I'm going to tell you about the VUCA world that I'd like to envision very quickly. So the 4 skills that I think we need to be cultivating in young people today and honoring are vulnerability, unlearning, curiosity, and awe. And I'm just going to touch on those very quickly. And I know you came and thought, this is a tech conference. But no, I'm going to talk about human stuff, because that's what excites me. So the first is vulnerability. Now, if you have a kid who's going to have 16 jobs in 9 industries, invariably some of those job changes are maybe not going to be voluntary. It's a lot of change. And so they need to be really resilient. But when we think about resiliency, we tend to think of maybe the definition of resiliency that means you have to be tough, right? You have to be strong. But has anybody here seen Brené Brown's TED Talk? Like the most watched TED Talk on TED? No?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. I was going to say, if you haven't, please go out. Leave It's better than my presentation. Go out, Google it, watch it right now.
Maybe we've seen it. What's your talking about?
So Brene Brown says in her research that the key element to resiliency is actually vulnerability. That's the one quality that will lead to the most resilient individuals. And vulnerability is not particularly honored in the corporate world, right? And it's certainly not honored in the male corporate world. So those white males that we were talking about. When you look at, in most developed nations, the biggest killer of young men under the age of 35 is suicide. And so how is it that we can train people to be more resilient? And that's by honoring vulnerability. So the next one is unlearning. This sounds a little strange, but Yoda said it. I'm stealing this from Yoda. Yoda said, you must unlearn what you have learned. And why did he say that? Because basically what he was saying is that we have some deeply held truths that we believe to be true, but maybe aren't. And as long as we believe them, they might be masking, in fact, what we need to be seeing, the vision of the future. And so there are certain truths we have to unlearn. One of them that I think, quite frankly, might have swung the election here and certainly was an element in Brexit is this romanticism of manufacturing. Maybe we have to release that. Maybe things like universal basic income, which scares some people. So some of these truths, perhaps we have to unlearn them in order to be able to see what the future is. The next, curiosity. Did you know that curiosity actually changes the chemistry of your brain? So there was a piece of research done by UC Davis. And what they found is if they showed people a question that they were curious about the answer, it actually triggered their dopamine. So it gave this reward center in their brains. But what was really interesting is that when they then showed them the answer to the question, that also triggered the hippocampus, which means that answer was then embedded in their long-term memory. So why does this matter? Because curiosity actually helps us remember not just that information, but all sorts of information that surrounds it. So if we want to be developing and being able to learn lots of information very rapidly, we've got to cultivate a very high degree of curiosity. And there's a slightly controversial study that says, in fact, the gadgets and gizmos, the phones, is killing our ability to be curious. I don't know that I'm going to go there. I think that the data is still too new, but it's something to consider. And then the last is awe. So awe is a really interesting emotion. Some scientists at UC Berkeley did a study, and they said awe and cultivating a sense of awe was the single most positive emotion that you could have, both physically and psychologically. That awe was associated with greater happiness, greater innovation, and a greater sense of wanting to contribute to the world. I mean, I'll have some of that, right? So I will close because it is hot, and thank you for your patience, with just a little thought from Stephen Hawking, who's much smarter than me. And Hawking has said a few things about AI. One of them was that it's going to destroy the human race, but we won't touch on that one. That's a little negative. But what he did say is that AI is an incredible magnifier. That basically AI acts as a magnifier to human skill, because it's solving human problems. And I think that's a great way to finish, because that to me is what Inspirefest is as well. It's a magnifier. That you come as individuals who have these things you want to achieve, but you go to this event and it becomes this magnifier where you feel that you leave there and you're able to achieve more. So I'm hoping that you guys maybe will join us in Dublin and you'll cultivate a little curiosity and awe as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Don't go anywhere, Monica.